What's up, everybody? Viktor here, and it's time for yet another nation guide. This one is for Milan. Without further ado, let's just get it started. And just like all of my other guides, the first thing we're going to talk about is the estates and privileges. For the most part, this is a standard start, so you can go ahead and grant or not grant whatever you feel like doing in your estates and privileges. That being said, there are three things I want to say. First off, you still want to grant religious diplomats. You don't have to, but if you don't, you will not be able to match my starting diplomacy, and my starting diplomacy is very, very strong. So I would recommend you do so, though you don't have to. Second, I strongly recommend you do not grant the advisory councils or anything else that'll drive up your stability cost. You're going to lose a lot of stability early on. And then you're going to go into a disaster, and you're going to have to buy a lot of stability back, between 2 or 3 at the bare minimum. So increasing that cost is a very bad thing to do, especially since you're not going to be hiring advisors this early. So don't grant these until you're actually ready and you're out of the disaster. Lastly, grant all of your crown land privileges first and then seize land. By doing so, you end up with 5%. If you seize land first and then grant your privileges, you end up with 4.999%. So you have to dev something. So just do it in the right order so you don't have that problem. With that being done, you're now done with the estates and privileges. Now let's pivot straight over into the military. You see, you're going to hire the free company, but before you do start off with 5% professionalism. If you hire the mercenary company before you slacken, it costs 5% professionalism. So slacken first, and then hire the free company in Como, and that's all you need to do. If you want to make your ruler into a general, feel free. If you want to hire a normal general, again, feel free. It's not realistically going to matter, and you kind of want your ruler to die even if he's not a good general, because this is bad. All of these right here are completely random. The personality traits are completely random. So you can have nothing but bad or some good, like stability cost modifier, but he's not going to be around for much longer. Now that that's done, your military is basically set up and you're ready to continue on to the diplomacy. Now when it comes to diplomacy, the first subject we're going to talk about is your starting rivals. Your rivals can be not just the people here on this list, but you can even start off being rivaled against Burgundy or even Austria. Now if either one of these rivals you at the start, you do not have to restart the game. It really doesn't matter that much. The reason I wanted to point this out is because so long as you did grant the religious diplomats privilege, both of them are willing to royal marry you at the start of the game. Now, Burgundy is a useful ally to have. Austria, not really. While Austria is useful in the fact that you can then stay in the HRE when the Italians leave it, at the end of the day, you're not likely to maintain any alliance you have with Austria from the start of the game. The reason why is you have a disaster that is going to fire once your legitimacy falls below 75 or you're in a regency council, which means basically once your starting ruler, who is really old, kicks the bucket, which is going to be relatively soon. The reason why this is because you'll become a republic, but France and Austria will get personal union war goals on you. And the way the AI is coded now, they will break the alliance with you, hoping to get it once their truce ends. Seems pretty simple. Burgundy will help protect you from them attacking you, because they don't get one, but Austria will absolutely break with you. Now France, on the other hand, they will actually usually maintain it because hopefully you'll end up finding yourself in that disaster during the 100 Years' War. And they won't break the alliance mid-war because it'll cost them 1 stability. Now once you can end this disaster, so it's over, you're out of it entirely, they lose the war goal. Meaning you just get to keep them as an alliance and they don't care. So the hope is to get Burgundy on side, who hopefully is not rivaled by France, and pick up France quickly enough so that during the 100 Years' War, not only will they not break with you, but they will even come down here and help kill the rebels that you're going to have to fight. The other people you can get pretty easily are Hungary, who's only 1 opinion off from giving you a royal marriage, and Castile, who's fairly close as well. All you need to do is basically improve relations and scornfully insult somebody, which, given the fact that they're usually going to be rivaled against England, means you're going to scornfully insult them because it makes all these other guys like you more, including France. So you're just going to have to improve France with a little bit for basically couple of months, because usually at the beginning of the year, they'll turn friendly, at least if you scornfully insult people and improve relations with them a little bit, and they'll be willing to ally you. Now, the reason I talked about all that is because usually you'll start off being rivaled against by Provence. If you rival Provence, it makes it very, very difficult for you to get this French alliance because they start off allied to them. So whatever you do, do not rival Provence unless you have no intention of getting the French alliance. If you have no intention of it, go for it. Just rival them. It doesn't matter. But if you're going to try and get France, which I strongly recommend, yeah, don't do it. Who you're going to rival instead is Venice. The other ones you can just match in Mantua and Switzerland. The reason why is because you're going to eventually go after Switzerland and just punish them for rivaling you, but you're going after Venice as your first war target. The reason why, you have 2 cores right here and you want to get them back as quickly as possible. As far as your actual alliances go, you're going to roll Mary Burgundy. You're going to try and get Hungary on your side by picking somebody that they really don't like. In this case, I'm going to go with Venice because I'm already rival to them. I'm going to scornfully insult them. As soon as I get my diplomats back, I'm going to Royal Marry Hungary because now I have tied up a diplomatic relation slot. Now, if I wanted to, and Austria does not like Venice, I can always still ally them and hopefully call them into the war against Venice. Hopefully then trigger this during that war, meaning I'll be able to keep both France or Austria in that case as allies. Not likely to end up happening, but sometimes you will find out that Austria starts off wanting the Venetian land. You can also royal marry them just to tie up a slot and try and keep them on your good side, because you have 1 extra diplomatic relation slot, and you're not likely to actually find a bunch of people willing to be good allies. After that, it's simply scornfully insulting England to try and get Castile on my side, and trying to ally the Pope, because they will almost always be rivaled to Venice, which means they'll usually help you in that early war against Venice. So I'm going to go ahead and scornfully insult England, start improving relations with Castile and France, trying to get them as allies, and see who will end up helping me against Venice. So I'm going to pause the recording. I'll see you guys in just a second. And welcome back, everybody. So it's been a couple of years. I found a couple of allies and used curry favor so that they'd be willing to come in and help me punch Venice. However, let's talk about how this game develops so you can try and find similar things in your game in case things aren't clear-cut. Now, France did get Maine because England just surrendered it. So obviously, France is not going to be in the 100 Years' War with me, which means they'll probably just break their alliance the moment they can to get that personal union. Now, Castile would not ally me when I was allied to France because they get minus 25 reasons to ally with somebody that rivaled them. So I broke the alliance and allied Castile. The thing is that France, after that, still was willing to ally me for whatever reason, so I allied them too, and figured I'll just roll the dice, because if they break the alliance, I already lost the royal marriage, I can deal with that later, but if I can end up holding it because I get lucky with events, I might actually be able to maintain it. Bohemia and Hungary are not rivals in this game, so I was able to pick up them because they will also usually rival Venice. They're just less useful than Hungary is generally. So in this case, great, I have somebody else that'll help me punch them, and of course, I still have Burgundy, and Burgundy is going to come in a little bit later to talk about. Now, I was not able to get the Pope because they're rivaled by Hungary, which, again, gives 25 reasons for them not to ally you. But on top of that, they allied Mantua, who is my rival, so they were not willing to ally me pretty much in any case, though I might be able to get them. But instead, I just grabbed Ferrara, because Ferrara I can give Ravenna, and you have to have Venice lose all of this land to complete one of your missions so that you can get more claims on more of Italy. So since you can't grab this in the first war, being able to hand it off to either the Pope or in this case Ferrara is worth it, though Ferrara, because they'll want other land here, it's worth it to call them in later. With that being said, I am now ready to attack Venice. So I'm going to call in these two. I'm going to leave Ferrara out of it for now. Once I have this land occupied, I can call them in, because I'm trying to take all of these provinces right here for myself. So as long as I can get the occupations on a lot of them, at least, then I'll call in Ferrara. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording again, because this might take a while. So I'll see you guys in just a little bit. And welcome back, everybody. So that was a pretty bloody war, and it usually will be, but it is finally over. The reason why it's usually a pretty bloody war is because you, generally speaking, are going to be one of the weaker elements of your alliance chain, so they're going to want to focus on you, as opposed to Hungary or Burgundy or Austria, whoever else you call in. On top of that, the two provinces that you're trying to go for are both defensive provinces, and there's a fort on them. Meaning, unless you're very lucky or you have a really good general, they're going to want to come over here and fight you immediately because these four provinces are not defensive in any way. Meaning, if they can catch you here waiting for your allies to help, they'll likely crack you. If you try and go on the offensive, they'll likely destroy your army and possibly even stack wipe it. So be very careful doing this. Now again, I wasn't able to get the Pope. The advantage of having the Pope is that he has a decent-sized fleet. And combined with the Hungarian and Croatian one, you might actually be able to have their fleet just go somewhere else. If you can do that, it allows the Croatians, or the Pope, if he actually is over here, to use their fleet and knock out what is actually preventing you from getting to Venice. Meaning you can occupy Venice in the war. Now, if you can do that, great, absolutely do it. It helps out with the war score, so you don't have to push it as long as I did. I couldn't. But here's the thing. You do not need to actually take Venice to get what you want. At all. Just do not piece out their small little allies, because that'll drive up the war exhaustion, the participation, the war score, all of that in your favor. So keep them in the war and just let them sit there for a while. Especially if they have an army running around, because they'll likely go bankrupt on top of that. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to get the disaster to trigger while I was in this war. It is unfortunate, but it is what it is. Now, if you actually look at this peace deal, yeah, it's possible a coalition will form, and given how your game is playing out, there might be other people on this list because they're your rivals. This is pretty much the people that rivaled me, or I rivaled so far, or Siena, which I fought, and Venice, who I'm taking land from. So you might have other people in here. If there are other people in here, or you're worried about the coalition, what you're going to do is you're going to move both of your merchants here into Genoa and into Venice, and set them both to establish communities to have them decay aggressive expansion faster. On top of that, you have friends in high places. This mission that you should get done within a couple of years, long before you attack Venice. This also gives you improved relations, plus some prestige, which will also increase the rate at where your aggressive expansion decays. So you want to take all of these when you piece them out. By doing this, even though a coalition may form, it usually won't form for long, and then you'll be able to expand once this is done later. Now in this case, I'm taking the money as opposed to war reps, because I actually could take either or, because I don't think they're likely to have much of an economy after this, because I'm betting the Ottomans are right about to attack them. So I'm going to go ahead and peace out. And at this point, you can choose to either core this up yourself or do what I'm going to do, and that is release at least 2 of these guys here, because I want to get the privileges in here of both nobility integration policy and strong duchies, and I'll hand them these 2 provinces. Mainly because I don't want to deal with this fort. While it is a nice fort to have, I don't want to pay for it. On top of that, I don't want to be coring any of this up because I haven't been able to get rid of this guy yet. So with any luck, he will die soon and we can continue talking about this guide, but simply state this because you have cores, and get ready for further expansion in a couple of years. You're not expanding again until after the Shadow Kingdom event fires, and that should be in 2 years. It fires in about 1460. Every single time it seems to fire then. So it's not going to be long before you can expand, but you don't want to take any other land in Italy at all until that point, simply because if you do, you're paying 50% additional aggressive expansion per province. So just wait. You'll be fine. With that being said, I'm going to pause the recording. I'll see you guys in a second when I'm actually able to talk about something next. And welcome back, everybody. So I made it a couple of years before I realized I really do not want this guy to stay around any longer. He is pretty much garbage, and it's going to end up holding back the rest of this guide. So instead of dealing with him because he just won't die, the other option is to force this disaster to end up triggering. Because while this can trigger, if you're in a regency council, it can also trigger if you have low legitimacy, or at least below 75. So how do you end up triggering it if he won't die, giving you the regency council? That's actually kind of simple. You just got to lower your legitimacy. How do you do that? Well, you get into royal marriages. That's all you need to do. Just find some people and royal marry them, and it'll start dropping your legitimacy until you're below 74. Or, sorry, 75. And the reason you do this is because now it'll trigger, it'll start decaying, and all of those royal marriages that you have, they're gonna be dissolved in 10 months. So I'm losing some diplo power. In exchange, I'll have a better ruler. Now, you can have a decent heir come up. Now, if it's worth waiting 15 years for that, probably not. Probably not. On the other hand, I have had a event fire where I got a talented daughter, or you might get the Born Under a Star, or any of those events that trigger early on, meaning you'll have a 666 daughter that you don't want to get rid of. Here's the good news. Those daughters usually come up about 13 years old. And once this fires, you'll see what I'm going to be talking about regarding that. Peace in our time, I guess. The advantage of this is pretty simplistic. Give me a second. I'm almost there. And then I don't have to keep trying to stretch this. For St. Ambrose, I become a republic, but you don't lose who is in charge at the time. As long as they are 16 or up, you get to keep them. Meaning, if you had that 666 daughter, or if I had waited the 6 years for my 425 or whatever he was, heir, to become 16, and then forcibly trigger this disaster, I get to keep him as the leader of my republic, and I immediately get to re-elect him. Now, do you want to necessarily re-elect? That's up to you. In this case, I definitely don't. I definitely do not want to keep this disaster walking around in charge. But a 16-year-old, even if he's bad, you can just keep re-electing until he's no longer bad. Now, all of that being said, the way this disaster plays out, even if you had a 666 heir, it's not going to matter in the long run because you're not going to be able to keep them. So I'm going to have this disaster play out, and I'll bring you guys back for each event that ends up popping up, because then you'll be able to see it. Now, you do lose your government reform progress when you convert over. If you recall, I had it up there, the little icon, because I had it in full. I forgot to talk about it. But you will lose it, so if you end up going long enough where you can take a reform, take it. You might as well have the temporary tax or manpower benefit before this ends up firing. So just go ahead and grant it, you don't get to keep it. And this mission right here, Reclaim the Ducal Lands, wait until you become whatever it is you're going to become. You can at this point become a republic or a monarchy. If you want to be a republic, do it now. You get Republican tradition. If you are going to end up becoming a Sforza monarchy, wait until he takes over and makes it into a monarchy, because this will give you legitimacy. You do not need Republican tradition if you're going to become a monarchy. But if you're not going to be the monarchy, you want that Republican tradition because it will drastically reduce the cost to boost up stability, which you need to have in order to end this, and you're going to be paying a lot of stability to get through this disaster. So, your call on what you do, but just click it at the right time. You don't want to click it too early. With all that being said, I'll see you guys in a second. And welcome back, everybody. So this is the event where they will end up getting the personal union CBs on you. Austria, they're not my ally, but I do have plenty of others that will help defend my independence, because Hungary did not fall under the personal union under Austria. I do have Castile over here, and France already broke their alliance with me because they were only maintaining it because I was really married to them, so they're on their own anyway, so it's not like it's going to really matter. With that being done, pausing the recording, see you in a second. And welcome back, everybody. So this event will end up giving you a 3-5-4-2 general, and it will also continue further events down this chain. The bottom option will make you lose the stability, make whoever you're fighting against, if you are fighting against anybody, for them to get that general, and you don't want them having Sforza. But more importantly, if you do not continue the other events in this chain, you'll have to stay in this disaster for 10 years. Meaning, Austria and France will maintain that personal union war goal against you for that 10 years, but also you're going to be paying that increased national unrest and more stability cost while you're in it, which is just annoying. So instead of dealing with that, I really recommend you just let him become a general for you, even if you're not necessarily going to use him. So I'll see you guys in just a second when the next event pops up. If this disaster goes on long enough for you to end up having a re-election, do not re-elect anybody. Not unless you have that 666 person or somebody with a lot of monarch generation. Don't re-elect anybody. Because by the end of this, you're going to lose them anyway. So you're not building anybody up at this point. With that being said, see you in a second. And welcome to about literally a second later, when Sforza clashes with the Republic, the next event in this chain. Again, you have two options. The bottom will make these events stop. Your leader, Sforza, will die, and you'll have to fight pretender rebels. The problem is that this will make you, again, have to continue for 10 years in this disaster. So if you want to maintain your 666 Republic ruler, you can. But you have to do it here, and you'll have to be in this disaster for 10 years. The other option is to lose that ruler, but get a 555 ruler instead. This is why you're not re-electing anybody. Because Sforza is going to take over the government, and you're now going to be out of that Ambrosian government, and you're now in a military dictatorship. You're going to have another event that'll let you choose what you go down. But for now, you're good. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. See you in a second. And welcome to the final event in the Ambrosian Republic chain. Now you have the choice between three different kinds of government. Either you're going to follow Sforza and become a monarchy again, which of course you can. You can still remain a military dictatorship, which there are some people that prefer this because of the extra morale of armies, so go for it if you want to. Or you can flip back to the Ambrosian Republic. Now the leader down here is going to be random from what I've experienced. He will not always be a 443, but he could very easily be higher or lower, but it seems to be at least a 333 in my experience. Though I will be honest, while I have done about 50 test runs of this, not all of them have I taken it this far. So it could be terrible, it could not be, so you'll have to simply read the event. Now, as you can see here, you will lose government reform progress, so if you're fine with that, go for it. In this case, I'm going to stay as the Ambrosian Republic because I prefer being a republic early game, and you do get to now keep whatever reform progress you've had. Because you've done this, the 666 is gone. At this point, Austria will lose that personal union claim it has against you, and it will stop being domineering, and hopefully should flip friendly. They, of course, won't royal marry you because they can't, but you should be able to try and get them as an alliance in the future. Now, if you notice, I attacked Genoa. There was a couple of reasons for that. First, I wanted to make my allies actually help me doing this. Second, they were allied to Florence, who is the only other person in Italy that stayed in the HRE because they were allied to Austria. So I can make them break their alliance, so I can end up taking them out later. You want to stay in the HRE, though. Not because of Florence or any other Italian state that stays in the HRE, though. You want to do it because of Trent. You haven't been able to attack Trent yet, or at least I haven't told you to. You can attack them earlier if you really want to. But the whole reason why is because if you take Trent, that is a perfect area to drop a fort, because it does qualify in the mountain passes here, which will give you extra fort levels in that province. Sorry, it's right here. It's this mission right here. This one will give you an extra fort level in Trent. So you want to end up getting that province. I just haven't taken it yet. So this is something you want to go for, but it stays in the HRE no matter what. So you can go after them right after you're done with Venice if you want. However, generally speaking, you're going to want to wait because you took a lot of aggressive expansion taking stuff from Venice. If you want to leave stuff in Venice so you can go after Trent so you don't have to bother staying in the HRE, you can. But staying in the HRE, even if you're not allied to Austria, really doesn't matter that much. Hey, what's up everybody? Viktor from the future here when 1.34 has been released. When I originally recorded this video, there was a topic I was about to bring up that I knew might change in 1.34. And now that I've played it, I know it definitely is something to be aware of, and it has made it a little bit more annoying to do, but it is still something I wanted to address. So I wanted to come back here and edit it so you had the full information in front of you so you could make the appropriate choices. And the specific topic was relatively simple. Why would you want to choose Sforza? Why would you want to be a monarchy? Because Ambrosian Republic has a lot of benefits. The morale, tax modifier, and all of the extra monarch point generation you're going to have by being a republic. And being a military dictatorship is also really good because you have all that extra morale of armies, allowing you to punch well above your weight. So why would you want to become a generic monarchy again? It's actually kind of simple. It's just the Burgundian inheritance. That's the only reason. Now, the only time it's really worth doing it for is if they've rivaled both Austria and France, and you are their only ally that has a royal marriage, or at least you're the largest of the royal marriages. So if they also allied and royal married Brigands, go for it. You are likely to get the Burgundian succession, or they're going to remain independent. It's unfortunate that it still might not go to you, but it is one of the things you're just going to have to live with. But the thing I wanted to bring up is not the Burgundian inheritance. It's actually the fact that even if you go monarchy, you can still get the Ambrosian Republic again. Specifically, going down to tier 6 and flipping back to Republic. When anybody else would do that, the Ambrosian Republic would not appear for them. But the only requirement to see and become the Ambrosian Republic is that you were at one point the Ambrosian Republic before. And during the disaster, you were. Meaning if you go through the disaster and become the Ambrosian Republic and then choose Sforza, you can get to tier 6, flip Republic, and then pick the Ambrosian Republic from there and continue on as a Republic. Yes, that is going to be a very long time in the future, and it's probably not worth it. However, I do believe in player choice, and I can see situations where you're behind in tech, or you desperately need to fill up your idea slots before the age of absolutism, or whatever it happens to be, and you decide, you know what, I want to be a republic more than a monarchy, because it's not really penalizing you in the age of absolutism to be the Ambrosian Republic, so it might be something you choose to go for. And I wanted to point out you can still go back if you want for the Burgundian inheritance. With that being said, let's go ahead and get back to the guide. Now let's actually talk about Genoa, because while I brought them up to talk about Florence and the HRE and Trent, I am attacking them for another reason. Specifically, once they end up leaving the HRE, the Ottomans attack them. And they'll take these islands here, or they may even take this land up here if they got Crimea as a subject. In this game, they didn't. Once that happens, they end up dropping below 100 war score. They start off at 107. Meaning if you attack them early, you can only take this land over here. Now, however, because they're under 100 war score, I'm able to vassalize them. And you want to vassalize them, hopefully while they still own this land. Because not only do you have strong allies, meaning the Ottomans aren't going to try and touch you. At the same time, once you integrate Genoa, you'll get this land over here yourself. Meaning you'll be able to start expanding into Crimea, into the Great Horde, into whoever else you can over here, skipping the Ottomans and expanding here to build up more of a power base, so that once you do form Italy and you're ready to go expanding into Europe, you'll have all of this land over here, which will most likely get sieged out, but it's not going to matter, because your real core lands are here behind giant mountain forts. So with that being said, I'm going to pause the recording because there's one last thing I need to talk about, and I want to see if it fires. So I will see you guys in just a second. And welcome back, everybody. So I've been waiting for a while, and the event just isn't firing. And it's kind of random when or even if it's going to fire in your game. So instead of waiting for 30 more years for it to not fire at all, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it. Now, the event I'm talking about is the Feast of the Pheasant event. Now, this event is triggered by a mission of Burgundy that does have a prerequisite, which is what's causing the delay. The prerequisite basically says they have to have 100 opinion of the Pope and 50 papal influence, and they tend to either not improve relations with the Pope or spend that influence, which is the problem. The good news is in the next patch, they're supposedly making it so they will focus on getting them done. However, until it's released, I won't be able to say whether or not it does work or not. But here's the thing. It's kind of random when it'll fire, but when it does fire, what it does is anyone that has positive opinion of Burgundy, so I will have to improve relations, less than 50 opinion of the Ottomans, and is the same religion as Burgundy, so in this case Catholic, gets a Holy War CB on the Ottomans. You do not have to border them. You just get it. So everyone who likes Burgundy, from Portugal to Poland, will get a Holy War CB on the Ottomans. So why do you want a Holy War CB on these guys over here? Well, because it's kind of random. You may have stupidly strong allies at the start of the game and get a Holy War CB on the Ottomans. In my 50 runs, I had 3 times where it fired before I even attacked Venice. I had 5 times where I was either mid-war with Venice or shortly thereafter. And then I had about another 6 times where it happened either during the war with Genoa or right after the war with Genoa. So it can happen largely at any time. But if you recall my allies' early game, when I still had the royal marriages, I had Castile, France, Hungary, and Bohemia. Enough to make it so I'd probably have about a 2.5 to 1 advantage in numbers over the Ottomans. Other games, I had Poland, Austria-Hungary, and Castile-Aragon because they all had their personal unions, including Lithuania, meaning I outnumbered them about 3.5 to 1. Now, because it's still the Ottomans, and it's still the AI you're relying on, you can still lose this war. It still can be a situation where you cannot take land, especially if you haven't attacked Venice, because you won't have a coast. So what's the point of attacking them? The thing is that you're not actually aiming for land. If you can get land, if you're fortunate enough where the AI isn't incompetent, or in a lot of my games where Spain will just go down here and siege out Tunis, and then go home, not helping with the Ottomans at all, well, then you're able to simply do what your goal is, which is just to get to 10% war score so you can take war reps. The reason why is early game you'll get about 4.1 ducats in my experience, and at about this point in the game you'll get about 5 to 6 ducats, depending on how much land they've taken, how much they've built, how much they've developed, etc. So in this kind of game it'd probably be closer to 6 because they've taken a lot more out of Venice. On top of that, they've also deleted all their forts, making it to be stupid easy for me to actually get 10 war score. But the reason why you're going for war reps is because 4 ducats, just at the start of the game, is almost half my total income. Meaning I'd be able to not only hire advisors, but I'd be able to use the extra ducat coming in to build buildings, to build forts, to build whatever I need. 6 ducats coming in, allowing you to start snowballing the rest of the game. So using this for that is great. Now if you can, and you've already gotten a port over here in coring range, if you can, absolutely take these 2 provinces, release Byzantium, and if you can, or you can't release Byzantium from a core here, give it to them, because then you can use the blockading straits just like you do with Morocco, just like you do with pretty much every other guide regarding how to beat the Ottomans I've ever made or ever seen, and use it to cripple them and take over the Balkans for yourself. But it's still not required to do any of that. The rest of your expansion is going to be pretty simple. In Italy, you're going to be wanting to subjugate the larger powers, because none of them here at this point are too large to subjugate except for Naples. Naples is still too large, so is Savoy, but you can subjugate through conquest Florence, and hopefully you'll be able to diplomatically vassalize some of these guys a bit later, but it's going to be varied on whether or not you can. But all you're trying to do is form Italy as soon as you possibly can. The reason why is because it's not that hard. In fact, if you take away my subjects and give me their land, instead of 8 provinces, I'd have 15, which means take Florence, take Rome, which are the only other 2 provinces I would be required to take. I can form Italy. If you do have this land in Genoa, once you integrate Genoa and you're able to start expanding in this region, move your merchant from Venice over to this area. The reason why is anything you take here, you'll take increased aggressive expansion because you're fighting into a religious group, so the Sunnis are not going to like you. But on top of that, the development that's in Italy, even though they're quite a distance away, is still very high. Meaning that even though they're a distance away, they're a different religion, different culture group, it's still enough where you'll be getting some decent aggressive expansion with the Great Horde for taking land in Italy. So be careful, because otherwise, just taking land in Italy and ignoring the Great Horde, ignoring the Sunni countries over here, you may still cause a coalition to start forming over here, stopping you from expanding over here just because you didn't move from Venice. The advantage of moving it out of Venice, by the way, is because other than Ferrara and Venice at this point, there's no one else in this node that I need to improve relations with that isn't already in the Genoa node, except for my vassals, which I don't care. It's not hard to improve relations with them and then integrate them, and then they don't matter at all. So try and get that merchant out of there as soon as you can, because it's beneficial to you. The other expansion paths you have are fairly simple. If Aragon does not fall under Castile, because it's not guaranteed to happen, absolutely come down here and take Sicily, take Sardinia. After you've taken Naples, if you can vassalize them, do so, because they have cores over here that you can take as well, and it makes it substantially easier. As far as Savoy, obviously you're just going to largely punch through them. France, make sure you attack France once you have your fort line here, because they will absolutely die to attrition, but also in the next patch, they're updating the ramparts right here, making it so instead of just being defensiveness and attrition, it'll give -1 to dice rolls, meaning it'll be -3 to dice rolls for the enemy. So if you even have a moderately decent general, you should be getting stack wipes, especially if you're Italy, because you'll have infantry combat ability very early. So by that point, you should be able to just bleed anybody on these walls. They will not come into Fortress Italy, but on top of that, you'll be able to use it to deplete their manpower just as bad as Morocco can do to Castile, and then just walk into France and capitulate them. Now, as far as pushing into the HRE, do not do so until you do either one of two things. Either one, destroy the HRE entirely, or two, form Italy. That 50% improved relations will keep coalitions off your back, especially since you're fighting into the HRE, which gives increased aggressive expansion. Also, wait until the Reformation and let the Protestants expand a bit, because that way they will care less for the Catholics you're attacking, and the Catholics won't care about the Protestants or Reformed you're attacking. So use that against them. So it's not worth to go after Switzerland other than potentially humiliating them or showing strength, but you don't really need to. With all that being said, y'all should be good to go. Playing Milan is fun, but also relatively easy once you really start going, because at this point, there's nobody in Italy that can challenge you, and you're able to keep up with some people like Austria or France without much difficulty. And on top of that, a lot of these guys should be willing to come in just to help you expand without any problem whatsoever. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe, because I'll definitely be making more nation guides. If you want to see a particular country, you guys got to be leaving comments below about what you want to see. There's been not enough comments coming in telling me what you guys want to see, meaning I'm picking largely what I find interesting, and as you can tell by my nation list of what I was covering, yeah, I liked M for this month. So you're seeing a bunch of M-related countries. With all that being said, thank y'all for watching. I hope y'all have a wonderful day.